It's embarrassing to admit this, but I rolled my eyes the second I opened the box. I mean, it was supposed to be an anniversary gift. Our 5th anniversary. Not some, whatever that was. My name's Lorelei. I'm 34, and I guess you could say I didn't handle it well. Graham, my husband, sat across from me at our small dining table, his face filled with this hopeful, almost boyish look. Like he'd just handed me the moon, wrapped in a neat little bow. But it wasn't the moon. It was a bracelet. A bracelet that wasn't even special. Just some simple silver chain with a tiny, forgettable charm. Don't get me wrong. I'm not the kind of woman who expects diamonds dripping from her wrists for no reason. But, for 5 years, 5 years of putting up with his fluctuating moods, his career anxieties, and the ever-present crushing weight of our finances, I thought maybe he'd put in more effort. Something thoughtful, romantic, memorable. Something that screamed, "I see you, Lorelei. I see everything you do for us." "Do you like it?" he asked, and his voice was so earnest it almost hurt. I could tell he was trying, really trying, to read my expression in the dim light of the single candle flickering between us. I tried to fake a smile. I really did, but it came out all wrong, tight and brittle. "Yeah, it's cute," I said, but I couldn't hide the tone. You know the tone. The one that says, "I am lying through my teeth and I want you to know it." His face fell, just collapsed. And in that instant, a wave of guilt washed over me, quickly followed by a surge of hot frustration. I didn't want to ruin the moment, not really. But at the same time, I couldn't help thinking, why does he always do this? Graham knows I like nice things. It's not like I'm subtle about it. For months, I'd been dropping hints, leaving my laptop open to the web page, mentioning it in passing about this beautiful, delicate gold necklace I saw online. And instead, I get a bracelet that looks like it came from a mall kiosk. I know how this sounds. I do. But here's the thing you have to understand. Graham and we've been through a lot this year. Money has been impossibly tight ever since his hours got cut at the firm. I've been picking up extra shifts, taking on freelance work I hate, doing everything I can to keep us afloat. I've even skipped my last 2 salon appointments to save a little extra. And for me, that's a big deal. I take pride in how I look. It's my armor. So yeah, maybe I was hoping for something that showed he appreciates all I've been doing. Acknowledges my sacrifices. Is that so wrong? I placed the bracelet back in its cheap-feeling box and set it on the table between us. "Thanks," I said, my voice flat, but the damage was already done. Graham let out a sigh. It was a sound I knew well, half frustration, half utter defeat. "You don't like it," he said. It wasn't a question. I crossed my arms, a wall going up. "It's not that I don't like it, I just thought, I don't know, maybe you'd put a little more thought into it." "Lorelei, we're broke," he snapped, and for a second I was stunned. He almost never raises his voice at me. "I can't exactly go all out right now. I thought this was something you'd actually wear." "That's not the point," I shot back, my own voice rising. "It's not about the money, Graham. It's about the effort. You didn't even ask me what I wanted." His jaw tightened. I could see the muscle flexing in his cheek. "Effort? Are you serious right now? Do you have any idea how many extra hours I work just to afford something halfway decent for you?" "Halfway decent is right," I muttered under my breath. And that's when it really blew up. "You know what, Lorelei?" His voice was sharp now, cutting through me in a way that made my chest tighten. "I can't win with you. No matter what I do, it's never enough. You're always focused on what you don't have instead of what you do." "Mon." I stood up from the table, my chair scraping harshly against the floor. "Maybe if you stepped up for once, I wouldn't have to point out what's missing." The words hit a nerve. I knew it the second they left my mouth, but I was too fired up, too full of righteous anger to care. Graham's face hardened. He leaned back in his chair, looking at me like I was a complete stranger. "Step up?" he said slowly, the words low and dangerous. I've been doing everything I can to keep us afloat, Lorelai. Meanwhile, all you care about is whether or not I can keep you happy. God forbid you actually care about me for once. That shut me up. For a second, I just stood there, staring at him, completely caught off guard. He'd never said anything like that to me before. Sure, we'd argued. Plenty of times, but this felt different. It felt final. Like something essential between us had just cracked, and there was no putting it back together. I didn't know what to say, so I just turned, stormed off to the bedroom, and slammed the door behind me. A part of me, the part that still remembered the man who used to chase me down the hall to kiss me after a fight, expected him to follow, to apologize, to make things right like he usually did. But he didn't. He stayed in the kitchen. I could hear him clearing the dishes, his movements loud and deliberate. Each clink of a plate felt like a judgment. I flopped down on the bed and stared at the ceiling, my heart racing. I felt angry and guilty and confused, all at once. I wanted to be mad at him for ruining our anniversary. But deep down I couldn't shake the feeling that, maybe I'd gone too far. Then again, wasn't it his fault for not understanding what I needed? I thought about everything I'd sacrificed for him. The men I could have been with. Men with stable careers, with family money. Men who could actually provide the life I wanted, the life I deserved. But no, I chose Graham. And for what? A cheap bracelet and an argument that left me feeling more alone than ever. Lying there in the dark, I started to wonder if we'd finally hit the point of no return. I didn't sleep much that night. Graham never came to bed. When I woke up in the morning, the sun streaming weakly through the blinds, he was already gone. His side of the bed was untouched, cold. The kitchen was eerily quiet when I went to grab some coffee. The bracelet was still sitting on the table where I'd left it, its little charm catching the morning light like it was mocking me. I ignored it and grabbed my phone instead. My fingers trembled slightly as I texted him. Are we really going to let one fight ruin our anniversary? Let's talk. No response. Hours went by. Nothing. It wasn't like Graham to ignore me, not even when we were fighting. He's always been the type to cool down, come back around, ready to talk things through and smooth it all over. But this time, it felt different. It felt like he was done. By noon, my frustration had boiled over into pure rage. I started replaying everything from last night in my head, twisting it around, polishing the narrative until I was the perfect, blameless victim. How could he just walk out like that? On our anniversary, no less? Who does that? Sure, I wasn't exactly graceful about the gift, but was that really enough to just leave? I called my best friend, Quinn, because I needed someone to back me up. I needed validation. She picked up on the second ring. What's wrong? She asked, her voice full of concern. I didn't hold back. Graham and I got into it last night. He gave me this cheap bracelet for our anniversary, and when I tried to talk to him about it, he completely blew up on me. Quinn was quiet for a moment. I could practically hear her choosing her words carefully. Okay, she said slowly. What exactly did you say to him? I hesitated. I just told him that I thought he could have put in more effort. I mean, it's not about the money, you know. It's about showing that you care. Right? Right, Quinn said, but her tone made it clear she wasn't totally on my side. And how did he take that? He got defensive. I snapped. He made it all about how hard he's working and how I'm ungrateful. Like I'm supposed to just settle for whatever scraps he decides to throw my way. It's not fair, Quinn. I do so much for him, and I don't ask for much in return. Aha, she said, and I could tell she was holding back whatever she really wanted to say. Look, Lori, I'm not saying you're wrong to feel disappointed. But maybe you could have handled it differently? Graham's been so stressed out lately. I don't want to hear it. I cut her off. He's stressed? What about me? I'm the one holding everything together while he mopes around about work. The least he could do is show me he appreciates me. Quinn sighed. Okay. But what are you going to do now? Are you going to talk to him when he gets home? If he even comes home, I muttered. Of course he'll come home, she said, though she didn't sound entirely convinced. Just, Maybe take a breath before you talk to him. Think about what you really want to say. I hung up, feeling more irritated than comforted. Quinn didn't get it. No one did. Everyone always acts like Graham is some kind of saint because he's trying his best. But what about me? I'm trying, too. I've sacrificed so much to keep our lives running smoothly, and no one ever gives me credit for that. By late afternoon, I still hadn't heard from him. My anxiety started to creep in, a cold dread coiling in my stomach, but I buried it under another layer of anger. I decided that if he wasn't going to come to me, I'd go to him. I drove to his office, a small insurance agency downtown where he's been working since college. When I got there, his car wasn't in the parking lot. I called him again. Straight to voicemail. That's when it hit me. He wasn't at work, he wasn't anywhere. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing with possibilities. Was he at a friend's house? A bar? Somewhere else? The thought of him being somewhere else made my stomach churn, but I shoved it aside. Graham wasn't like that. He wasn't the type to cheat or run away. At least, I didn't think he was. When I pulled onto our street, my heart leaped. His car was in the driveway. Relief flooded through me for a split second before it was replaced by a fresh, potent wave of anger. I stormed into the house, ready to confront him, ready for the fight I'd been rehearsing all day. But when I walked into the living room, the words caught in my throat. Graham was sitting on the couch, his head in his hands, looking more defeated than I had ever seen him. He didn't even look up when I came in. "Where the hell have you been?" I demanded, slamming my bag onto the coffee table. He finally looked up. His eyes were bloodshot and tired. "I needed some time to think," he said, his voice flat. "Think about what?" I shot back. "How to avoid your wife. How to make me feel like crap on our anniversary." Graham shook his head, a bitter, humorless smile tugging at his lips. "You just don't get it, do you, Lorelei? This isn't about the bracelet. It's not about the anniversary. It's about us." He paused, and his next words hung in the air like a death sentence. "We're not working anymore." "Oh." His words hit me like a physical punch to the gut. "What are you talking about? Of course we're working. We've been through worse fights than this." "Have we?" he said, his voice low and tired, "because it doesn't feel like it. It feels like no matter what I do, it's never enough for you. I try to show you I care, but you don't want that. You want someone who can give you the world? And I'm not that guy. I never have been." I opened my mouth to argue, to defend myself, but nothing came out. Because deep down, in a place I refused to look at, I knew he was right. I did want more than he could give, more than he'd ever be able to give. But wasn't that his problem, not mine? "I just need you to try harder," I said finally, my voice trembling. Graham laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. It was bitter and cold and full of years of disappointment. "Try harder? I've been trying for years, Lorelei. And all I get in return is you looking at me like I'm a disappointment." "Oh. Maybe if you weren't such a disappointment, I wouldn't have to," I shouted, the words tearing out of me before I could stop them. His face went blank. And in that moment, I knew. I'd crossed a line. A final, unbreakable line. He stood up, his movements slow and deliberate. He grabbed his keys from the bowl by the door and looked at me with an expression I'll never forget. It wasn't anger. It wasn't sadness. It was resignation. "I'll be back for my stuff," he said quietly, and then he was gone. When Graham walked out that door, I stood there in stunned silence. The nerve, the absolute nerve of him to leave me like that, as if I was the problem. But the shock didn't last long. It quickly curdled into a white-hot rage. How dare he act like I'm the one who's been dragging this marriage down? After everything I've put up with, his moods, his failures, the constant worry about money. I spent the rest of the evening pacing the house, my thoughts spiraling out of control. He hadn't come home yet, and the longer he stayed away, the more furious I got. I started thinking about all the times I'd let him off the hook, all the excuses I'd made for him to our friends, to my family. And this is how he repays me? running off like some drama queen just because I told the truth? But underneath the anger, something else was creeping in. A cold, slithering panic. Graham might be broke, but if he wanted to divorce me, I'd be screwed. I'm not blind to how these things work. If we split up, I wouldn't get much. He doesn't have a lot of money. No hidden savings account, no family trust to fall back on. The thought of trying to survive on my own, paying all the bills, working some dead-end job just to keep a roof over my head, it made my stomach turn. And the idea of being single again, it was even worse. It's not like I'm 22 and can just bounce back from a failed marriage with a fresh start. I'm 34, and while I still look good, I've made damn sure of that. I know how the world works. It's harder to find someone new at my age, especially someone who can give me the life I deserve. No, getting divorced wasn't an option. Not for me. I needed a plan, and I needed it fast. If Graham thought he could just walk out and leave me hanging, he had another thing coming. He wasn't going anywhere, not if I had anything to say about it. By the next morning, I had my game face on. I decided to play the part of the remorseful wife, just long enough to get him back under my control. I wasn't really sorry, of course. Why should I be? He's the one who started all of this by being so weak, so pathetic. But I knew Graham. I knew his soft spots. He'd fall for it. He always does. I waited until he came home, which wasn't until late afternoon. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept all night. His clothes were wrinkled, and there was a tension in his shoulders that told me he was on the verge of snapping. Good. That meant he was vulnerable. As soon as he walked through the door, I softened my expression, making sure to look just the right amount of hurt and regretful. "Graham," I said quietly, stepping toward him. Can we talk?" He looked at me wearily, like he wasn't sure whether to stay or run. "What is there to talk about?" he asked, his voice flat. I feel awful about the way things went down," I said, keeping my tone low and shaky. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I was just overwhelmed, and I took it out on you. I'm so sorry." Graham blinked, clearly caught off guard. "You're sorry?" he repeated, like he didn't quite believe the words. "Yes," I said, forcing a sincerity I didn't feel. "I know I've been hard on you lately, and that's not fair. I love you, Graham. I don't want us to fall apart over one fight. Please, can we just start over?" I reached out to touch his arm, and for a moment, I thought it was working. He looked at me, his eyes searching mine, like he wanted to believe me, like he wanted to forgive me and put it all behind us. But then his expression hardened. He pulled his arm away. "You don't mean that," he said, his voice cold. "You're just saying what you think I want to hear." That caught me off guard. Usually, Graham would have caved by now. He's always been too soft for his own good. But this time, he wasn't buying it. "What are you talking about?" I asked, trying to sound hurt. "Of course I mean it." He shook his head, a sad, knowing look in his eyes. "No, you don't. You're not sorry, Lorelei. You've never been sorry for the things you say. You're just sorry you have to deal with the consequences." My heart started pounding, but I kept my face a neutral mask. "That's not true," I said, my voice trembling just enough to sound convincing. "I love you, Graham. I'm trying to fix this." "Are you?" he shot back. "Because it feels like all you care about is yourself. You don't respect me, Lorelei. You never have. And I'm done pretending like that's okay." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. He'd never spoken to me like that before, so directly, so accurately. And it stung in a way I wasn't prepared for. But then the panic set in again, sharp and urgent. I had to double down. If he thought he could leave me, he was wrong. I'd fight him tooth and nail if I had to. "Graham, please," I said, my voice breaking for real this time. "Don't do this. We can fix this. I'll do whatever it takes." He stared at me for a long, silent moment, like he was weighing the last 5 years of our lives in his mind. Finally, he sighed, the sound heavy with exhaustion. "I don't know if I can do this anymore," he said quietly. "I'll stay, for now, but things have to change, really change." I nodded, pretending to agree, pretending to be relieved. But in my head, I was already plotting my next move. If he thought I was going to let him dictate the terms of our marriage, he had another thing coming. I wasn't going to let him leave me, and I certainly wasn't going to let him take away what little stability I had left. For now, though, I had to play nice. Let him think he was in control. Let him think I was willing to change. But in the back of my mind, a dark, cold truth was solidifying. I didn't respect him anymore. Not as a husband, not as a man. And the only reason I was staying in this marriage was because I didn't have a better option. The next few weeks were unbearable. Graham stayed, like he said he would, but it wasn't the same. He was distant, guarded. He went to work, came home, ate in silence, and slept on the couch. The house was tense, the air heavy with all the things we weren't saying. I kept up the act for as long as I could, the apologetic wife, the supportive partner, but it wasn't working. He was slipping further and further away, and the reality of it hit me like a brick wall. He was done. No amount of fake apologies or emotional manipulation was going to change that, and if he was going to leave, I had to be ready for it. If I couldn't keep him, I'd make sure he regretted every second of his decision. One night, after another excruciatingly silent dinner, I finally broke. "Are we even going to talk about this, Graham? Or are you just going to keep acting like I'm not here?" He didn't even look up from the TV. "What's there to talk about, Lorelei? You don't want to change, and I can't live like this anymore." I scoffed. "Oh, so now I'm the problem. You're the one who walked out and decided this marriage wasn't worth fighting for." He finally turned to me, his eyes filled with a kind of profound sadness that made me uncomfortable. "Lorelei, I've been fighting for this marriage since the day we said, 'I do.' You're the one who stopped caring. All you see me as is a paycheck that isn't big enough for you." That stung, but I refused to let it show. Instead, I threw my hands up in exasperation. "Fine. If that's how you feel, then maybe we should just call it quits." His expression didn't change. "Maybe we should." The words hung in the air between us, and for a moment, I thought I might cry. But instead of sadness, I felt a familiar rage bubbling up in my chest. He wasn't supposed to agree. He was supposed to beg me to stay, to promise to try harder, to fight for us. But he didn't. "Great," I snapped. "I'll call a lawyer tomorrow." And he just nodded like he'd already made peace with it all. "Do what you need to do." The divorce process was brutal, even more so because I went into it with one single-minded goal: to make him pay. I wanted everything: the house, the car, whatever pitiful savings he had left. The lawyer I hired told me there wasn't much to take, but I didn't care. If I couldn't drain his wallet, I'd drain his spirit. At my lowest point, I even found myself wishing we had a kid, just so I could get child support out of him. That's how far I was willing to go. Graham, on the other hand, seemed heartbroken. He didn't fight me on most of it, which only made me angrier. It felt like he was giving up, like he was happy to hand over everything just to get away from me. And maybe he was. He'd always been too soft, too willing to take the high road. It made me sick. By the time the papers were signed, I'd managed to get the house and some spousal support, but it wasn't nearly as much as I'd hoped for. He'd been smart enough to protect what little assets he had left. Still, I thought I'd won. I thought I'd taught him a lesson. But as the weeks went by, alone in the house I fought so hard for, the victory felt emptier and emptier, until it wasn't a victory at all. It was just quiet. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I was sitting in my tiny, overpriced apartment, scrolling through Facebook. I had to sell the house. I couldn't afford the upkeep on my own. My victory had lasted all of 2 months. Now my life was a cramped beige box in a part of town I used to look down on. And that's when I saw it. A picture of Graham. He was smiling. A real smile. The kind I hadn't seen on his face in years. A smile that reached his eyes and made them sparkle. And standing next to him, with her arm wrapped around his waist, was a woman who looked like she'd just stepped out of a magazine. She was gorgeous, long blonde hair, a perfect, natural smile, and a figure that made my stomach churn with a toxic cocktail of jealousy and rage. My hand trembled as I clicked on her profile. It was public, and I started scrolling. My blood boiled hotter with every picture. There they were, holding hands at some fancy-looking restaurant, hiking in the mountains, both of them beaming, covered in sweat and dirt, looking happier than I ever thought Graham could be. It didn't make any sense. How could he move on so quickly? And with someone like her? What did she see in him that I didn't? A failed insurance agent with no money and no ambition? I tried to tell myself she was probably just like me, fooled by his nice guy act, thinking he was something he wasn't. I tried to imagine her future disappointment. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. Graham had his flaws, sure. He wasn't a millionaire. He wasn't a go-getter. But he had loved me, utterly and completely. He had tried, in his own quiet, steady way, to give me everything he had. And I had spit it back in his face. I had been the one who couldn't see it, who couldn't appreciate it, who took his love and measured it against a price tag and found it lacking. And now he was giving that love to someone else. Someone who was looking at him in those pictures like he was the moon. Someone who probably deserved it more than I ever did. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. It wasn't a thought, it was a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. I'd lost. Not just the marriage, not just the house. I had lost everything. Graham had moved on, he had found happiness. While I was stuck here, in this shabby apartment, bitter and alone, scrolling through social media like some pathetic teenager. I shut my laptop with a snap. The screen went dark, but I could still see the ghost of their smiling faces. I leaned my head back and stared at the water-stained ceiling, feeling the full weight of it all crashing down on me. This wasn't how my life was supposed to go. I wasn't supposed to end up here, working a job I hated just to scrape by. I wasn't supposed to be alone. But this was my reality. And for the first time, in the suffocating silence of my own making, I had no one to blame but myself.